Welcome to another segment of provocative conversations destined to provoke further thought and spark greater questions regarding God, church, and the religious establishments of both the past and the present. I am the proud heretic, Mr. Provocateur himself. Hello, I am Mr. Provocateur. I am the ordained heretic, and I am starting another subtopic within the topic of the divine season of the pandemic, prophetic pandemic utterances. I don't consider myself a prophet. I don't care about a title. I don't consider myself a minister. I don't care about the title. I do know that I am a teacher. I do know that I have operated in ministry for years and years. And I do know that I have been both licensed and ordained. However, I don't subscribe necessarily to those things in where I walk today, because I believe that it is those things, those type things, titles and licenses and education and all of these other things that have gotten people to the point of their arrogance and whatever today. And I don't want to be a part of any of that. I am just speaking forth the prophetic utterances that God has given me. The prophetic utterances of the pandemic, or within the pandemic. The generalities of this season. What I want to do here is, some things may seem a little redundant only because certain things it was hard for me to separate in subtopics. I couldn't give you 22 elongated readings that God gave me and I typed down. Some of them are 20 pages long, some are 15 pages long, and I didn't want to give it like that. So I had to pull, cut and paste into their individual file and topics, because I wanted to give it to you in a way that the people could grasp it, could understand it, and could go back and pull from in that sense. I didn't want to jump around. So in order for me to flow, I had to put it in subtopics. So here we are in subtopics, but in subtopics, some things carry over into the subtopic of another topic as well. So you may hear a few things that you heard, or some people, it's good for me to repeat some of this stuff, some of it, because some people didn't listen and they skipped and they jumped and they didn't go down chronologically. They can't wait. That's people who open their gifts before Christmas. That's people who start cutting off the ham before Thanksgiving morning. Some people just can't wait. They just can't wait. There's some people who's trying to jump out of the house before the pandemic period is over. There's some people who want to take the mask off and the gloves off because they're just tired of it and they just want to go back to whatever. Well, because of that, it's good for me to carry certain things over into other subtopics. So that's what I'm going to do in this period. On February the 26th, 2020, God said to me, there is a change. Not knowing what was going on at that time, there's a change that is occurring. The generalities of this season, I'm just going to speak to you about the general things that you are to look for in this season. The general things that not necessarily maybe you ought to look for, but that you are to expect, or that are to be expected. Why? Because these things will happen. And as I read, you will realize many things have happened, because again, I'm over in the month of October of 2020 now. And I'm pulling like right now from February the 26th of 2020, which is 10 months ago, 8 months ago. So you've seen things come about now. But anyway, this is the time period that I'm releasing. There were some people, I know 3 ministers were waiting on me to release these recordings some months ago, but I could not rush the process of doing it. And I wanted God to tell me when. And when I got the when, that's when I moved on it. Now, of course, those 3 individuals may not be a bit concerned about what I'm saying now, because they probably feel that I was missing God and whatever else. And then, some folk, just because I say hell, well, hell isn't even a term, or it is a term. It's not even a reality. So why are you getting messed up on a word, hell? If I say quadriloquent, you don't know what that is. You don't know that to be a word. You don't know that to be an actual place. And you don't get messed up over it. Well, if hell is not an actual place, why are you getting messed up over the fact that I say hell? Hell, when you're home, you say more than that. When you're mad, you say more than that. Or if I say as, well, as the world turns, aspirin, associate, oxen, come on, donkey, just loosen up, loosen your collar. There is a change that is going on, God says, February 26th. So the generalities of this season, just the general things. First of all, we know a change is going on. Nothing is going to be the same. People are not going to hear the same, or they won't approach the same. The way that the people hear will not be the same. People are shifting. People are moving. People are searching, inquiring, requiring. The shift is of God. I'm shifting people. I'm changing people's approach. I'm changing people's mindset. Their mindsets are changing. Their desires are changing. Their approach is shifting. Their concepts are changing. Their perceptions are changing. They're shifting away from the concepts of old, from the concepts of past generation. The generational flow of the past will not flow in the directional flow of the present. The present flow will not consist of the generational flow of the past. Don't look for this season. Don't look for this period in time to look like any other period in time. The flow of the present is flowing right past the flow of the past. People will no longer flow in the flow of the past. People will no longer seek the flow of generations past. People will let dead things lie. People will no longer seek out the things of the past. People will begin to flow in the things of the present flow. You are in the present flow. The generalities of this season, one of them is you are in the present flow. You are in the direction of the flow. If you are alive, doesn't mean that you're consciously and purposely going into the direction of the flow. You could be fighting against the flow. But for me, and for many others, you are in the flow. You will not flow in the things of old. Don't look to flow in the things of old. On March 13th, 2020, God said, there is a new direction that is being paved. There is a new path, a path that is void of religious obstacles of the past. The flow is void of rituals. This new flow that is occurring in this season is void of tradition. This flow is void of the things of old. The flow of what is right now is trampling over the things of old. The flowing is running right through what has been. The flow is paving a new direction. What has been will no longer be. There is a new remnant that is coming forth, a new remnant of people. The generalities of this season, that's all I'm talking about. This remnant of people will not look the same. They will not act the same. They will not speak the same. They will not see the same. They will not think the same. They will not hear the same. And they will not believe the same. You're not going to sell them the okie doke and they're going to buy it. The shift demands movement. The shift demands people to move from ideas and perspectives and concepts. The shift demands people to move into position, move into proper position. And whoever does not move with the shift will be left by the shift. The shift demands change. The shift demands newness. The shift demands freshness. The shift demands fresh air. The shift demands new thoughts. The shift demands deeper revelations. On March 15, God said, the flow will get you to where you are to be. The flow in this season, wherever you were hoping that God would get you to, wherever God was showing you prior to the pandemic, where he was leading you, trust that this season, the generalities of this season I'm talking about, this season has a flow, and that flow will get you to where you are to be. The flow that you were designed that you just couldn't reach, this is it. It doesn't look like the flow. It doesn't look like anything that you're familiar with, but you have to know by faith that this flow is in sync with your destiny. Don't question the validity of this flow. Don't question the validity of the direction of this flow. Do not question where the flow is taking you. Your destiny is within the movement of the flow. You cannot go against your destiny by going with the flow. Going with the flow will not pull you away from your destiny. Going with the changes that are occurring in this season will not pull you away from your destiny, but rather they will bring you into your destiny. You see, your destiny creates the movement of the flow. Your destiny is the momentum of the flow. Your destiny is what gives the flow its momentum to move. In order for there to be momentum, there has to come a moment. In order for there to be a destiny, there has to be a multitude of preset moments. And in those preset moments, when you reach those moments, there's a momentum that flows, that's created. And that momentum is what gets you through this portion of your destiny and gets you into your next portion of destiny. So all that you're experiencing in this season is only to get you through and throughout your destiny. See, your destiny dictates the movement of the flow. Your destiny dictates the moment. Your destiny dictates the movement within the moment. Your destiny dictates the movement of the flow. The flow of this season is in sync with your destiny. And as long as you continue with the direction of the flow, your destiny is sure. Because all this is a portion of your destiny leading you into greater portions of your destiny. God says, get lost in the flow. Get immersed in the flow of what's going on right now. Get immersed in what he's doing in the flow of your destiny. Immerse yourself in your destiny. Immerse yourself in the moment of your destiny, in the moment in your destiny, in the moment of your destiny. To embrace the flow is to embrace your destiny. For your destiny is within the movement, the direction that the flow is taking you. The flow of this season is and is part of. It is your destiny and it is part of your destiny. Just as your destiny is and is within the flow. Vice versa. The embracement of your destiny is the embracement of the flow. See, to embrace your destiny is to embrace the flow, because the flow was only created because of your destiny. Your destiny included where you are right now. Again, when I speak of the flow, I'm speaking of the shift that we're in right now in this season, the shifting that is constantly occurring in the middle of the actual shift itself. And there's a flow that's bringing you into each of those moments of shifting. So the flow and your destiny are in total agreement with each other. In order for you to embrace your destiny in this season, you must perceive and then embrace the flow of this season. Embracing the current flow of this season is to embrace the directional movement of this season, in this season. Without embracing the direction that this season is taking us, you will forego your destiny, which encompasses the present season. You forego your destiny by refusing to go through the season. You want to embrace it, because if you fail to embrace the direction of the season, then you will fail to embrace a great important portion of your destiny, because your destiny encompasses the very season that you're in. In order to perceive the flow, you must become conscious of the current state of your destiny's present. Your destiny's presence is right where you are. And right here in your presence, there's this flow that's happening, this change, this consciousness that is occurring within you. And you're going to have to grab hold to your consciousness of your current, where you are right now, where your current state is. You can't be oblivious. You can't ignore it. You need to purposely be ever conscious of your destiny's presence. See, wherever you are is where your destiny is. Your destiny does include your future, but it also includes all of your past and all of your present. You have a past of your destiny. You have a present, or the presence in your present part of your destiny, and then you have the futuristic part of your destiny. You must get into the presence of who you are and what I am doing in order to perceive and then flow in the flow. You're going to have to get into the presence of who you are right now, who you are in your destiny, in order to perceive what God is doing, and then you flow in what God is doing. You cannot consciously flow in what you do not consciously perceive or choose to perceive regarding the flow. In this season, allow what God is doing to overwhelm you in your present state. Allow what God is doing to overwhelm you with the conscious state of your presence. Allow yourself, through the consciousness of presence, to be overwhelmed with the flow. In this season, go with the flow. Go with the flow of the current. Go with the flow of the current. Go with the flow where the current is taking you. God says, I'm in the current. I'm in the current flow. I'm in your present state. The current is of me. The current is of me. The current, the right now situation, the right now season is a current. It's occurring, and it's the right now situation that we're in this season is something that is current. And this something of this season that is current is moving as though it were a current taking us in a specific direction. God said, the current and the current are of me. He says, trust the current situation, the current state of the world, and then trust the current, the flow, the movement, the direction that this is taking you. He says, trust the current's flow. Trust that I am in the flow of the current. God said, you are in the movement. Your presence is in the movement. The movement that is going on is where we are. Our presence is in the movement. You're not going to find your presence in your past, in what was in our last dispensation. We've moved over through this pandemic season, through this pandemic situation, into a new presence, into a new present state, into a new dispensational period in time. The movement is in your destiny. Trust the movement. Trust the movement of your destiny. Get in the movement. Get in the consciousness of the movement, the divine movement, the divine shift, the divine shifting, the divine flowing, the divine changing, the divine disturbances of this season. Get in conscious step with the movement. Be aware of the movement. Be purposely aware. On March the 19th, this was a day after I realized what God was now doing. Not so much doing, but I realized that God was talking to me from somewhere around 2018 up until March the 18th regarding all that we're going through now in the pandemic season. And I did not realize that that was what he was referring to. But on March the 18th or 17th or 18th, whatever it was, that I became consciously aware. And on March 19th was where God said this to me. This is not the whole of what he said, but this is being pulled from March the 19th. He said, this is not a season where options are available. He said, options are no longer available. Options are not going to be available. He said the seasons of options are through. The seasons of choosing are no longer. No longer will people be able to choose. No longer will people be able to choose between two. People will only be able to go in one direction. People will only be able to go in the direction that is before them. And notice how all throughout this season so far, people have been wanting to go in different directions. Countries have wanted to go in different directions. People within countries have wanted to go in different directions. And every time we open up something, we have to close it back down. Every time a country opens up, they end up having to shut back down. Every time we move over into something else, we have to go back to what we were. That's just what it is. We're not going to be able to go in other direction. There's only one direction we're going to go, and that's in the direction of the flow. Whether we go into it purposely or submittedly, we're going. Or you're going to be ran over by it. People will only be able to go in the direction that is before them. There will no longer be other options. The options are off the table. God said this is a serious season. This is a very serious season that we're in. This is a season like no other. This is a season that has not been heard, a season that has not been seen, a season that no one has the answer for. Not necessarily. We don't have the answer for, but we have things that you can do. And one of the recordings that I'll do, one of the subtopics that I will deal with in this here, not in this particular recording right here, but within this series of tapes regarding the pandemic season, will be a one that I will called, or that I call, what we must do, the things that we must do in order to get through this season in a good, healthy manner. Okay. This is a season that has not been heard or seen. No one has the answer for. There is no answer for this season. You're not going to just cure this season. There it is what he said to me. There is no cure for this season. He says this season must play itself through. This season must go through its process. It must go through its ordained process. Nothing is going to cut this season short. Don't care what you do. It's not going to cut it short. Nothing is going to keep this season from going through its course. This season must play its course. This season must play through its course. There is no remedy for this season. No one can remedy the events of this season. The events of this season are beyond anyone's remedy, even the virus. Many will try to remedy this season and even the virus, but many will fail. Many will fail at trying to conjure a remedy for this season, but there will be no remedy. This season is a season of devotion. This is a season where devotion is of the uttermost importance. And anyone who is part of the shift is going to be devoted. If you've never been devoted, you're going to have to begin to become devoted, because that's how you're going to get through this here. Devotion is an important element of this season. It is a necessity to be devoted in this season. You better understand, sir, ma'am, whoever, how to be devoted, because that's what this is about. Your devotion, personal devotion. And let me say this to people. Your devotion to God doesn't start once you cut on the mic or once you cut on your video or your live and start talking. That's not devotion. Devotion is what comes before and after that. That is just something that you share. That is not something that you build your devotion as you're doing that. Not the devotion between you and God intimately and personally. That devotion begins beforehand. That's why there's a preparation period for what God has for us in our destiny. And then that's why there's a continuation of preparation in regard to our personal life and our destiny. Why? Because it's not enough to prepare and then now you just go live, but then when you get off, you don't prepare even the more for greater. Devotion is an important element of this season. God says devotion is part of the circumcision. If you're going to be circumcised in heart, you're going to have to do it through devotion. See, if you're only outwardly approaching God, then you will never get deep enough to get into the circumcision. See, in order to be circumcised, it took 8 days for you to get to the point of circumcision. If it takes 8 days for you to get to the point of circumcision, the male child had to be 8 days old. In order for that child to get to that age of circumcision, he had to go through 8 days. In order for you to get into the deeper and greater things of God, where your heart will be circumcised, where that junk will be cut out, it's going to require some time of devotion. It is part of the process of circumcision. Devotion is a necessity in the shift. In March 22nd, God began to say to me some of the things he said to me in regards to the generalities of this season. I'm going to be hopping all over because I'm just talking about the generalities. Because some people are only going to listen to the generalities of this season. Okay, just give me a synopsis of what's going on. Then others are going to want depth and specific headings. That's why I split it all up in subtopics. This is a rough period. God says this is a rough period. If God says that this is a rough period, a rough season, then this is a rough season that you've entered. This is not a season that you have experienced before, but it is a season that you can endure, and you will endure this. You will get through this. Not everyone, but to whom it is for. This is not a season as it relates to something that we're going through individually. And God was saying to me, this is not a season that's relative to your marriage. This is a season that is occurring around you. And that's when I began I was realizing, oh man, I was thinking all of this was personal. And God said, no. This isn't just you. So don't think this is just you against the world. It's personal, but yet at the same time, this is corporate. This includes that's why it's called a pandemic. But this is a season that is occurring around you. This is a season where things around you will begin to look bleak. People's situations will begin to look hopeless. People's lives will begin to fall apart. Now, this was way back in March when I didn't see any of this happening. He was just talking to me. And now we see where people's lives have fallen apart and become hopeless. People getting put out, people not having food, people not having money, a job, any future hope. family members died, mother, father died, sister, brother died, or all of the above, grandmothers, aunts and uncles and cousins and siblings and children, and people will begin to lose heart or hope. People will begin to lose their positions. Now we see people losing their positions in the workplace and everything else. People will begin to lose their income. Now, this was in March 22nd, you all. This wasn't happening yet, okay? But this is what God was telling me. Remember, what you see now is me reading what God stated to me then. But if you just walk with me in this, you will see and you'll begin to put it together as a puzzle, even yourself, as I had to. People will begin to lose their marriages. People will begin to lose their parents. People will begin to lose their siblings. And this is amazing because I did not know this on March 22nd. The deaths had just begun to happen, maybe I think in a hospital, some place in Washington State. And I think New York had just come on the scene with whatever. I don't know. But anyway, people will begin to lose their parents and their siblings. People will begin to lose their ministries. Now, stuff wasn't closed yet, y'all. Money was still flowing. Jackknife preachers were still doing their jackknifing. People will begin to lose their ministries. They'll begin to lose their members. Wow. Their employees. Wow. Their friendships. Wow. Their acquaintances. Wow. People's lives will begin to unravel. Their lives will begin to fall to pieces. This will be a period of instability. There will be instability in every region of the world. There will be no sure stability. Nothing will be stable. Nothing will be sure. Every region of the world will begin to experience instability in every area of their society. People will lose hope in the systems. People will lose hope in the systems of this society. The systems in their society will fall apart. This was not happening yet, y'all. The systems of this world will begin to unravel. They, the systems and their members, will begin to unravel and fall to pieces. People will fail to trust. The trust of the people will fail. There will be no trust. Who knew that we would get to the point that we couldn't trust the White House, the CDC, the WHO, or our president, or even preachers? Who knew? Well, some people knew, I'm sure. But anyway, people will fail to trust. The trust of the people will fail. There will be no trust. People will fail to trust what they once trusted and who they once trusted. The truth will cause the people to lose trust in everything. This is a time of great exposure. Listen to this. This is a time of great exposure. The truth will expose. The truth is going to expose, and it will expose everything that is needed to be exposed. There is nothing that is supposed to be exposed that will not be exposed. It will not be left unexposed. Everything that is supposed to be exposed will be exposed. Exposure will begin at the top. Exposure will take place among the elites. Exposure will take place within the powers that be. The powers that be will be exposed first. The exposure of the elites and those in power will begin the exposure process, and their exposure will be laid out first. And we're seeing that now in the White House and in other segmented places and areas of countries and systems. Those in position have chosen to silence the people who are a threat. Now, whoever knew that this was all going to happen? Some did. Those in position have chosen to silence those who are a threat. The people's voices have been placed on silent. The people's voices have been snuffed out by those in authority simply because of their threat upon the authoritative systems. But no longer will the people's voices be silenced. No longer will their voices be placed on silent. The people's voices will begin to be heard amongst the people, and their voices will be received amongst the people. This is a season of hearing. This is a season to hear. This is a season where people will be heard. The voices of the silenced will be heard in this season. People who have not been heard will be heard. People who have not been called upon will be called upon. The people will begin to listen to the voices of those that I have placed in the universe. The people will begin to hear the voices of those that I have ordained to be heard in the universe. The people will begin to believe the voices of those that I have placed in the universe to be heard. People who have not been silenced will now become silent. The talkers will now shut up. The ones who had the mic and were screaming the loudest will now be removed from the mic. People who have been heard will not be heard. People who were once heard will no longer be heard. Those who have been making much noise will make no noise. The noise of the noisy will be silenced. I am silencing the voice of those who have been noisy and disruptive. The noise and the disruption will cease from those individuals who have been noisy and disruptive. The noise and disruption from those people will cease during this season. Their noise and disruption will cease to exist. Silence will be of utter importance. Well, that will be too. But substance will be of utter importance during this season. Substance. This season will require those who speak to have substance. The voices of those who have been noisy and disruptive, but void of any substance, will lose their influence amongst the people. There you go, church. There you go, church. There you go, politicians. But we'll talk on that later. This season will demand substance. This season will place a demand upon those who possess substance. Substance will be very important throughout this season. This season will put a load upon those with substance. If you have substance, get your substance ready. Line your stuff up. Why? Because God, if he gave it to you, is going to use the substance that he's given you. Those with substance will see a great demand placed upon them as people will demand greater substance. People are not going to want fast food, restaurant, spiritual, non-spiritual junk. During this season, whoever is void of substance, whoever is void of life-changing substance will cease to be heard. You're not going to be heard in this season if you don't have substance. The voices of those with no substance will cease to be heard. No longer will their voices be heard. No longer will people attempt to be fed through the voices of those who are void of necessary substance. No longer will people feed into the voices of those who are void of substance. People will begin to turn themselves inward. People will begin to turn inward for what they need. They'll begin to search inwardly. They will begin to hear inwardly. They will not seek to be heard outwardly. Their seeking will be more inward than anything else. Their seeking will be inward. No longer will people run to and from to hear from me. No longer will people need to travel to hear. The hearing will be within them. The voice within the people will speak. The people will begin to hear the speaking from within. God says this is a quiet season, but this is a speaking season. This is a speaking and a seeking season. This is a season where people will seek me. People will seek words from me during this season. They will seek words that are relevant to this season. And they will, here's the thing, what God is saying is people are going to cease as much, if not at all, or if not altogether, seeking man in the direction of the church, from the directives of the church. I'll speak on that later. Only words that are relevant to this season will be effective. Words that are not in this season will not be effective. Words that are not relevant to the present will have no effect upon or within the present. Only present words, words that speak to your present dilemma, will have an impact during this season. Only present words, words that God is speaking right now, not words that are stale and written out in some book, but words that are present. Man shall not live by all that is printed, but by every word that is presently proceeding from his mouth. Only present words will have an impact upon the people of this period. People will only seek words that will impact the season they are in. They will not stomach words that are not spoken for this season. People are no longer wanting to hear regurgitated messages. They're no longer wanting to hear your exegetical approach to supposedly the mouth of God, the words of God. They're sick of that. It doesn't help them. It got them to where they are, and it got the church to where it is, and we don't want to be there no more. People will only seek words that will impact the season they are in. They will not stomach words that are not spoken for this season. This is not the season of wealth and prosperity. It's not the season for people's personal gain. This is a season of personal loss. People's personal gains will be lost in this season. Their personal wealth will be lost in this season. Their personal standing will be lost in this season. People's political standing will be lost in this season. This is a period of great discernment, great discernment, great discernment. People's discernibility, be able to discern and rightly divide and rightly decide and choose to make proper decisions. Your discernibility will be sharpened in this season. People will begin to discern things as never before. Their discernibility will be sharper than ever. People will begin to see the geniusness of others, the genuineness of others, the genuineness of others. People will begin to see the sincerity of those in ministry. In other words, your little tricks ain't gonna work no more. Coming from Broward County, Florida, they had a street, and it's still there, but I think they may have changed the street now. But anyway, there was a street in Fort Lauderdale that was called Sistrunk, Sistrunk, Sistrunk. And Sistrunk had all the tricks, all the trickers, all the females working the streets, selling dope and dudes, pimps, and whatever else. You had them all there. You had clubs there. You had little hood stores and hood bars and pool hall, whatever. Just all types of stuff along this trail of Sunrise in Fort Lauderdale, Sistrunk, on the east side of 95, Sistrunk. Well, Sistrunk, you can find all the tricks you want. Well, the church has been our updated Sistrunk for a long period of time, and all the tricks of the trade were being turned inside of the church. Well, during this period, people are not going to buy into your games anymore, your tricks anymore. They're not wanting to trick with you anymore. They're tired of catching diseases from you. People will begin to see the genuineness of others in this period. They'll begin to see the sincerity of those who are in ministry, the sincere ones. People will see as they have never seen before. Man will see as he has never seen before this here. This is an important season, a serious season. We are to know the season, and we are to acknowledge the season. We're to respect the season. We're to embrace the season, and we're not to ignore this season. We're to remember the season. We're to remember the season that we're in. In other words, we're to maintain a consciousness, a conscious state of reality of what is going on. On March the 24th, 2020, God said to me, this is not the whole of what he said. These are just portions of what he said. This season is not the way that others are thinking. This season will not play out the way that others are thinking it will. This season will be like no other. There will be no other season that will match what is going to be in this season. This will be a season that will parallel no other season in history. This season is not what other people are thinking it will be. This season is not what others are speaking it to be. What people are thinking and what people are speaking is not what this season is going to be. Many people are thinking and speaking beyond me. He's saying many people are thinking and speaking beyond anything that I'm doing and anything that I've stated to them. This season is not what others are speaking it to be. You have a lot of people speaking a lot of things. Many people are thinking and speaking beyond anything that I am thinking and saying. Their thinking and their speaking are beyond me. The direction that people are being led to believe is not what will be. I am not going in the direction that others are taking. So the direction that people are saying, and we're going to have this, and we see this great inflow of the church, and we see the revival, and we see the this, and we see the that, and we see the Armageddon, and we see the last of the last of the last of the last days. First it was the last day, then it was the last of the last day, then it was the last of the last of the last day. Now it's the last of the last of the last of the last days. And then, now we're moving into the last of 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 the last days. It's like, come on, man, how many more lasts you going to get in there before you realize you ain't doing nothing but making a out of yourself? I mean, come on, stop trying to figure what is not to be figured by your humanity or by your religious umbrella, your religious clique, your religious camp. I am not going in the direction that others are taking. That is not the direction that I am going. That is not where I am going. I am not saying any of what others are saying. What others are saying is not what I am saying. What others are thinking is not what I am thinking. People are being misled. Now, remember, this was way back in March, okay? People are being misled within their own thinking. People's thoughts are misleading them. People's religion is misleading them. People are misleading, misled and misleading, I would say. But people are misleading others. They're misleading others to believe what is not true. People are misleading others to believe what is not the case. Instead of being led and guided by me, people are allowing themselves to be misled and misguided. People are not allowing themselves to be led in this season. We want to do the leading. We don't want the authorities to lead us. We don't want the reality to be what it is. And we're not willing to submit to that reality. People are hearing every voice but mine. That's what God said to me. People are hearing every voice but mine. They are still not hearing me. They are not seeing me. They are still not letting me. People have yet to go with the flow. People have yet to experience the flow. You're not going to experience the flow consciously if you don't submit to the flow. Go with the flow. You're going to go through the experience of the flow, but it won't be a conscious experience. People have yet to discover the flow. People are not acknowledging the flow because they keep fighting against the direction. They're not even acknowledging it, that I'm in it, that God's hands are there, that God's hand is divinely working. The sovereignty of our God. People are not even conscious of the current flow. People are not consciously aware of the current or the current flow. People are not even cognizant of the fact that there is a current flow. People understand that something is going on, but people don't understand that something different is currently going on. But they have yet to put these things together. Let me get that right. Let me rephrase. Let me restate that, reread that. People understand that something is going on. They understand that something different is currently going on. But they have yet to put things together and then add God's sovereignty in there, his divinity at work in there. And not just, okay, so the devil worked and now God is trying to work to fix what the devil did. Come on, get up out of here, man. That's not what that's saying. That's not what is happening. God is doing beyond what you say or I say, people or the devil is doing. God is doing. God is doing. Don't try to limit how much of it he's doing. Don't try to draw a line between what he's doing and what the devil is doing. Come on, man. Anyway, people understand. If it was the devil, you could fix it. Fix it if it's the devil. People understand that something different is currently going on, but they have yet to put things together. People have yet to put things together in reference to the flow. People have yet to see my hand in this season. People have failed to see my hand in this season. My hand is at work. My hand is at work in this. My hand is in every bit of this season of events. This season is of my doing. Now, all of this I'm reading, it's been months since I even wrote this here, and I have not been going back and read it yet. And yet we're right in the flow of what I'm saying. I don't know what's coming up next necessarily. I just read what's already there as I'm talking to you. And it's amazing how we're going into the divinity of God in this portion right here. Now, remember, I did not know in March all that I know now. So God was needing to let me know that his hand was in this here. My hand is at work in this. My hand is in every bit of this season of events. This season is of my doing. This season is of my calling forth. I call this season forth. I call this season into being. No one called this season of the pandemic into being but me. I am the reason for this season. This season exists because of me. This season is because of me. This season has its existence because of me, because of God. People do not believe in this season. People do not believe the sanctity of this season. People do not believe the revealings of this season. People do not believe the leading of this season. People do not believe that this season is being led by me. People do not believe that they are being led through this season. People do not see the leading that is going on through this season. People's intuitions and religious beliefs will cause them to go against the current flow. Before their intuitions and religious beliefs ever lead them to go with the flow of this season, people will instinctively go against it. Because your intuitions and your religious beliefs will cause you to go against the current flow of this season before it ever leads you into going with the flow of this season. People's intuitions and beliefs are misleading them against the flow. People are still going with their own intuitions and religious beliefs. Instead of going with the flow of this season, people are letting their intuitions and religious beliefs lead them during this season. The natural flow of things will not be respected during this season. The normal flow of how things were before this season will not be. The season of yesterday's dispensation is different from the season of today's dispensation. Today's dispensation has a different flow. Today's dispensation has a flow that is going in a different direction. The directional flow of yesterday's dispensational period is different from the directional flow of today's dispensational period. Again, the directional flow of yesterday's dispensational period is different from the directional flow of today's dispensational period. This flow in this season is defiant to yesterday's flow. This current flow defies the flow of yesterday. The flow of this dispensation and season defies everything that was once considered as being normal. The current flow does not respect the normal flow of yesterday, for there is nothing natural or normal about the current new flow. God says the people are stubborn. The people are set on doing what they have always done. The things of this period have yet to slow the people. The people will continue to do just as they have always done. They will continue to be all that they have always been because the people are stubborn. The generalities of this season. The people are stubborn. They're set on doing what they've always done. Things of this period have yet to slow people down. All that's been happening still won't slow them down. The people, God says, will continue to do just as they have always done. The people will continue to be all that they have always been. People will not respect the flow. The flow of this season will not be respected by the people. The direction that God is taking this season, he said, will not be respected. People will continue to do as they have done. People will continue to deal the way that they have always dealt. Nothing will cause the people to do differently. Nothing will cause the people to see differently. Do not be misled by the people. God says, do not be misled by the people. Don't be misled by what the people are saying. Do not let the people mislead you. The people are incorrect. The people are not hearing me. The people are not seeing me. The people are not adhering to me. And I have one regarding this here, a subtopic regarding they will not hear, and I'll make one of that as well. They are continuing to do as they please. They are continuing to do as they have done. The people are not changing. They are not receiving the situation that is at hand. They are not even considering what is taking place. They are continuing to live as they have always lived. They're not even considering what's taking place. They are continuing to do just as they have always done. They are going about things just as they have always done. None of this has slowed anyone down. God says that the pride of the people is so great. Their pride has them speaking. Their pride has them thinking. Their pride has them doing. People's pride will not permit them to do what they are to do. The people's pride will not permit them to do as they should do. The people's pride will mislead them. The people's pride will be their own undoing. The people's pride is going to bring them to their own state of destruction. The people's pride is going to determine their own degree of self-destruction. Pride is the destruction of self. Pride leads to the destruction of self. The people's pride will measure the level of destruction they will incur. God says, the degree of pride that you show, that you have, is what is going to measure the level of destruction you will have in your own life in this season, perhaps even beyond this season. Pride is the destruction of self. It leads to the destruction of self. Though some people's prideful destruction will not kill them, it will definitely destroy them in more ways than a few. This is a time of self-destruction. This is a time where people will begin to self-destruct. This is a period where people will self-destruct like never before. The self-destruction that will take place during this season will not make sense. None of it will make sense. It's like God saying, The way that people will be self-destructing and doing things that is creating self-destruction within them, he said it won't even make sense. Why would anybody do that to themselves? Now you look at it now, this was back in March. Now you look at it now and look how people are self-destruction because they won't wear a mask, causing super spreaders even up to and at church and the White House. Isn't that something? Self-destruction. Their level of pride will determine their degree of self-destruction. God says that nothing is going to change with people until things occur. God said folk ain't going to change until things happen. Hard things, rough things, chaotic things, destructive things. Nothing is going to change within the hearts of the people until things occur that will occur during this season. They can't even not occur now. Things will occur. Things are going to occur. Things are going to get worse, much worse. And this was way back in March. Things are not going to get better quickly. Do not look at things to get better quickly. This season will not turn quickly. There is going to be a very lengthy period in this season where things are not going to get better for most. This is not a season for things to get better. Things are not going to turn back to what they were. Things are not going to be what they were before this season. Everything is going to be changed during this season. This season is about change. This season is about change, all about change. This season is about total change. This season is going to change everything. Change is not something that just occurs. Change in this season is not just occurring. This change is not just occurring. God is saying change is not something that just happens. Change in this season is not just occurring, just haphazardly occurring. This change that is happening is not just occurring on its own. This season of change did not just occur. This season of change is occurring because of design, because of divine design. The change during this season is by design. This change that is occurring is designed. This change is because of design. This change is due to design. This change is occurring because of design, divine design. People are not going to be who they were. People will not be who they once were. This season is going to change people. People will go through a change. People will be changed for the worse. People's situations will change for the worse. Throughout this season, people are going to lose what they have obtained up to this point. People are going to lose everything that they have trusted. People will lose the things that they have trusted the most. This is a season of loss. Remember, I told you that? People are going to lose everything they trusted the most. People will be crushed over what is occurring during this season. Now, this was back in March. I didn't know how this was going to play out. I'm just writing down what God is telling me. People will be crushed over what is occurring during this season. Their situations are not going to be better. Their situations are not going to get better. That is not what this is going to be. That is not what this season will be. Don't think that this season is a season of plenty. This is not going to be plenty for most during this season. This is not a season of wealth, but rather this is a season of loss. This is a season of famine. This is a season of famine for the wealthy. This is a season for famine for the well-to-do. A season of famine for the wealthy. This is a season of famine, lack for the well-to-do. This is a season for the wealthy to be brought to their knees. The wealthy will be brought low during this season. This season will force the wealthy to come from behind their ivory towers. When God told me this here, I knew he was telling me something deep, but I didn't know what ivory towers meant. But I want you to see the definition of ivory towers. That's one of those words that I want to look up. I don't want to just tell you this one. I don't want to skip over that one. I skip over a lot of words that I do have right before me defined already prepared, but I only use the words that I feel at the moment that I'm in. Even though I look them all up, I'm only going to go over the ones that I feel. And in this ivory tower one, I want you to see this. I didn't know what ivory towers meant, so we're going to go back and read what God said there about ivory towers. He says, the wealthy will be brought low during this season. This season will force the wealthy to come from behind their ivory towers. This season will cause the ivory towers of the wealthy to crumble before them. So now this is in March of this year. I did not know what God was talking about, but now here is the definition of ivory towers. Very, very interesting. Ivory towers, it says, it is a metaphorical place. A metaphor is something, a phrase that speaks regarding something else, but it's used as a metaphor. Jesus supposedly spoke in metaphorical form. You have metaphor, you have metaphorical, allegorical. Metaphorical is more of a term used to describe something deeper than what is. An allegory is almost like an analogy or something that is spoken but actually speaks of something greater or deeper in its significance than what is used. So ivory tower is a metaphorical place. It's a place or an atmosphere where people are happily cut off from the rest of the world. Sounds like the rich, huh? Happily cut off from the rest of the world. They don't live like we live. They don't even want to live with us. Now they're saying we're coming to the suburbs. People are running out to the suburbs to get with them or to take their stuff. If you are in an ivory tower, you live in a world of ideas separate from the realities of most people's lives. You're in your own reality. It is a privileged situation to be in. That's what ivory towers is, since ordinary people tend to have more mundane priorities, concerns, and struggles, because they don't have the priorities that we have. We have to determine whether we pay the bill or whether we eat. Their priority is, do I buy the $100,000 car? Or do I go for the Bentley? Do I buy a house with a pool or do I buy a private island? I'm struggling to pay. Pay what? Pay attention to the stock market that's not making money for me right now. Yeah, but you got billions in the bank. Yeah, but I'm losing some. But you got more than enough, more than you will ever be able to spend. See, it is an impractical, often escapist attitude. Ivory tower is this escapist attitude. I'm this particular race. I'm this of this particular ethnic group. I'm of this particular political camp. I'm of this particular religious camp. Therefore, I am not susceptible to whatever. It speaks of a secluded place that affords the means of treating practical issues with an impractical, often escapist attitude. If you describe someone as living in an ivory tower, you mean that they have no knowledge or experience of the practical problems of everyday life. Well, now let's go back now and see what God said about the ivory towers. The wealthy will be brought low during this season. This season will force the wealthy to come from behind their ivory towers. This season will cause the ivory towers of the wealthy to crumble before them. Wow. The wealthy will begin to faint in this season. They will begin to lose heart. They will begin to hurt like they have never hurt before. People are going to lose their wealth during this season. People are going to lose their businesses. Many businesses will be lost due to this season. Now, this was in March. Now we see where that has happened, and big time businesses and corporations are closing. But there was no way that I could have known that. I don't pay attention to stuff like that, and I definitely don't follow the stock market or anything like that. Very interesting, huh? We've only begun. Literally, and in this study, we've only begun. I hope that you are gaining insight into what's going on, and I hope that you will continue to listen and continue to follow, because there's so much more for me to put forth, for me to put out, and I should hope that you would hear it all and deal with God personally. Deal with him and ask him, where do I go from here, God? Where do I go from here? Let's move on to the next same subtopic, the generalities of this season, this pandemic season. Thank you.